House in Baltimore. We sit on the couch and watch the Red Zone channel. This guy watches the Red Zone channel and Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football and breaking down the coaches' tape all week long. If you are familiar with Pro Football Focus and their grading system and rating system, he is a big part of that. We got a chance to get to know him a little bit at the Super Bowl. Hope to see him soon in Minnesota. But I thought, at the bye week, and I've been chasing this guy all week, and he sits around and watches tape all day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So here we are at a bye week. Steve Palazzolo, one of our defending champions. He is PFF_. Steve, before I get going, you were a baseball player in your day. Any thoughts on the World Series before we get going into some hardcore Ravens numbers here?
Yeah, it was a fantastic series. It was great to see. I didn't care who really won. It was, impressive to watch how the Astros built that team. And then, I know one guy in their front office who's been over there as part of the overhaul, so proud of that guy. And Rich Hill's another former workout partner, so it was tough to see him lose for the Dodgers. So it was a great series, entertaining baseball, and definitely good for the sport to have that type of entertainment on the big stage.
So he played baseball, but he grades football now, Pro Football Focus. And look, so, first things first, Pro Football Focus is a little bit outside the realm of some fans. I know you have your Edge and Elite, and everybody can go out there and Google it and find all that good stuff. But I do find it fascinating, and this is a real tip of the cap to you, that as much as your organization and your grades are renowned and talked about and whatnot, when you graded Ryan Jensen out, probably about week 5, week 6, and things were going well for him, there were guys in the locker room throwing shade at him on his Pro Football Focus numbers, which I thought, that's like picking on a guy's war, in the locker room.
Right.
That we are now to the point where analytics are more important than ever. And I know, it's very easy to say, well, quarterback had a good day, or running back ran for a lot of yards, or a wide receiver caught 8 passes for 150. We can all do that on fantasy football. But grading position players and grading guys within the box and O-line and D-line, that's something that you guys take a whole lot of pride in.
Yeah, we do. We just try to bring context to every play. So that 10-yard run, the running back's accumulating the 10 yards. He gets all the stats, but maybe the center did make a key block. Maybe the right tackle did dominate his guy at the point of attack. And we just try to put some numbers, quantify that a little bit, because we're really film dorks more than anything, just watching the film, breaking it down, but just trying to quantify it a little bit. It is funny that players care quite a bit about their PFF grades, whether it is joking around in the locker room about other guys, or the DMs and emails and calls that we get from players throughout the week. Looking for, asking them for another look at certain plays and things like that. It is pretty funny. But look,
it's like going to the official score when you're a pitcher and wanting an error, not a hit.
And I've done that too. It screws up your entire ERA. Like, hey, just give this guy an error and it saves me 3 runs. So I get it. I mean, it is a part of the game. And look, we're just trying to bring different perspective to each play and add context to each play. So it's not just the running back, receiver, and the quarterback getting all of the credit.
All right. Well, the shade was being thrown by Tony Jefferson during press time when Ryan Jensen had 15 reporters around him, which is very unusual for Ryan Jensen. And I think he pointed that out as well. But there really is a grade for everyone. And this is probably the time, 9 weeks into this thing. Obviously, didn't go well for the Ravens in Tennessee the other day. Obviously, the O-line and the D-line have really been about what the team's about. I mean, when the offensive line's going well, they're running the ball, protecting Flacco, they have a chance. When the defense isn't stopping the run, as they didn't for several weeks without Brandon Williams in there, they can't win. And it really is a great grading curve for Brandon Williams. And, hey, why did we give that guy $12 million, in the offseason? What makes him so special? And then you see him not in there, and you see the double teams are no longer there. I mean, it completely changes the strategy of football when an elite player is missing. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Williams is a guy we've highlighted since, really 2013 he didn't play a whole lot, but 2014 really broke out, and he's been one of the better interior run defenders in the entire NFL the last few years. So there's a massive, change there when he's not there. Michael Pierce has been a guy that's emerged as like kind of his, his cohort up front. And when those guys are playing well, yeah, it is difficult to run on the Ravens. It makes everybody look a little bit better in that front seven. As far as the offensive line, it is tough to pinpoint because, Jensen's had his he's been good in the run game. I think everybody on that offensive line has kind of struggled in pass protection, and they've had, games where they've been good and games where they've been beat up pretty bad. Jacksonville game in particular comes to mind. So, trying to find that week-to-week consistency is going to be a key for that team. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, very much, starts in the trenches. As much as I'd like to see better playmakers on the outside for Flacco or whatever it might be, if your quarterback's uncomfortable, it's very difficult no matter who you have out there.
Well, and I think in the case of the Ravens, when elite players like Marshall Yanda and Brandon Williams are missing, when there's no Macklin, when there's no Wallace, when they're running around with Griff Whalen and Michael Campanaro and Chris Moore as their three wide receivers, I do think people here believe that based on his salary, Joe Flacco should walk on water. Some thoughts about Flacco. I mean, you've been watching this a long time. You go back to the point where he was grading out better before the knee injury, before the offensive line started to disappear around him in the running game that has not been effective. When you see the Ravens offense 9 weeks into this, I mean, obviously we see the conundrum here and we see it week after week. Is there anything encouraging about it for you? I mean, for us, we're looking at the schedule as being encouraging in the second half. But more than that, I do look out there and see Macklin and Wallace and Watson, guys I've heard of, guys who've had better days, guys that may be on the other side of their career, but guys that, it's better than Griff Whalen. No offense to Griff Whalen, right?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, the Flacco thing, I think you do have to give him at least the excuses that, hey, the supporting cast hasn't been great, at least since about 2014. I mean, they've been dealing with a very inconsistent receiving core. You have a guy like Steve Smith roll in there for a little bit, and he's productive, but they were not complimenting him a whole lot. And I do think it's affected Flacco's game. When he was at his best, of course, everybody's going to point back to 2012, but even prior to that, when he was at his best, he has no problem taking chances, throwing the ball down the field. Remember when he had Anquan Bolden, and Bolden was covered left and right, and Flacco still throwing him the ball, letting him go up and make plays. Flacco seems to have lost that edge a little bit, lost that trust with his receivers, and, can you blame him, right? I mean, he doesn't necessarily have those guys that go up and make plays like Bolden. So I think, getting him back to a more aggressive player, because he's got the big arm, he can drive the ball at the intermediate level. Probably gets a little too much credit for his deep ball. It's a little inconsistent in general, but I just think he needs guys that can go up, get the ball that he can trust, and you get him back into his more aggressive mindset, and I think that's going to be a big key. So we'll see if they can do that here in the second half, because I think it's just been a little too conservative the last couple of years. A combination of the receivers aren't getting open, but also Flacco's not that guy that's going and taking the calculated risks, not the silly risks, throwing the ball at a linebacker or a safety, but the calculated risks that I think made him a productive quarterback early in his career.
Steve Palazzolo joining us here. He is PFF_Steve, former minor league pitcher, now grades all things at Pro Football Focus. They do a great job out there. And let's talk about the rest of the offensive line and where you stand on, let's say, Ronnie Stanley, who isn't John Ogden yet, but certainly has, proven his mettle as a blue-chip player. And, we saw Miami a couple of weeks ago. We'll always be grading him against Tunzel and the weed bong mask and all that stuff, and how this all worked out. But some thoughts about Ronnie Stanley being an elite left tackle in this league and a Pro Bowl guy.
Yeah, I don't think he's there just yet, but I can see the flashes. I think, as far as pass protection goes, he's been solid all season. Bit of one of his worst games, honestly, actually, against Tennessee last week overall, and I think that knocked him down a peg. But I think he's well on his way to becoming the pass protector that we expected, I think, coming out, which between him and Tunzel, it felt like, Tunzel may have had a little bit more upside in the run game, but Stanley could have been right there with him in pass protection. So far, Stanley has outperformed Tunzel for the most part, and I've been impressed with Stanley in the run game, one of our higher-graded run-blocking tackles so far. And again, last year, aside from one game, he was one of the better pass-protecting tackles. So he's certainly shown it. Just looking for a little bit more of that week-to-week consistency. I thought he got off to a great start this season, but he's had a couple games, whether it was week 1 against Cincinnati, the Jacksonville game again in week 3, where Jacksonville's defensive front is really beating up everybody, and then last week against Tennessee gave up a little bit. So I think Stanley's on his way. It's just a matter of that week-to-week consistency getting a little bit better.
Austin Howard was a guy jettisoned by the Raiders, and Look, I mean, they could have gone out and given a lot of money to Ricky Wagner. They did not do that. They let him go off to Detroit, and we'll see him in a couple of weeks when the Lions come in here, and they got their own problems at this point. But in the case of Austin Howard, how did he grade out at the Raiders, and what did you make of him as a pickup? Because let's be honest, I mean, Ozzie went into camp believing he had one sort of set, right? I mean, they had Urschel, they had Alex Lewis, they had drafted Saragusa. At that point, they had Marshall Yanda at right guard. I mean, they kind of had it all figured out, and Howard and to some degree even Macklin, who came in June, were things that happened well after the draft, well after the free agency period, to say, well, you didn't get Ricky Wagner, but you got a right tackle that can play, and 9-10 weeks into this, I don't think it's been the greatest thing ever, but certainly a kick save and a beauty for both of these signings, quite frankly.
I think that's a good way to put it. Look, the average offensive lineman, and I use the word average as an endearing term when it comes to offensive linemen. Average in the context of the NFL for an offensive lineman right now is really, really important. It's really productive for your team. I think it's a valuable commodity, and that's essentially what Austin Howard's been throughout his career. He has one grade over 80 in our 0 to 100 system, which is good. That's a really good grade back in 2015. Last year, he was right around 70, which, again, is average. This year, he's at 73.1. And when there's so many tackles in the league who are in the 40s, they're getting beat left and right, and they are actual liabilities. Having a guy that, he'll have some bad games, but overall he's going to hold up pretty well. I think that's what Howard is, and I think that's absolutely an extremely valuable commodity in the NFL, especially at right tackle. The right tackles are they're tough to find because a lot of times scouts just kind of throw them out there as more of an afterthought, but they're more valuable than ever because of how many good pass rushers line up opposite the right tackle these days. So I think Austin Howard, solid across the board and a valuable commodity in today's NFL.
He is Steve Palazzolo. He's with Pro Football Focus. You can follow him out there as well as PFF_Steve. This portion of our WNST programming brought to you by Coppin State University. Your home for Eagles basketball all winter long. Kicks off this week. Lady Eagles, men's Eagles. We're going to have Juan Dixon around here, Dwayne Burrows as well. You can learn more at CoppinStateSports.com about our flagship partnership with Coppin State University. Also, give the King a ring this holiday season. Lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get out to Rosedale on Pulaski Highway and tell Paul King we said hello. He's not on Facebook, so you got to go in there to visit him in the big cage anyway. I got to get out there and get some Malbec and some fresh craft beers for my seasonal taste before all the pumpkin ale is gone and all the good stouts are picked through. Steve Palazzolo is our guest. He's PFF_Steve out on Twitter and all things Pro Football Focus. Dude, you start throwing numbers at me like, the 40s are bad and the 70s is okay. He got into the 80s. Give me the number system and some sort of ranking, because there really is a baseline, I think, for anybody that comes over to the nerdery of sports, be it analytics in baseball and sabermetricians and what is war and all of that. But in football, it is a little bit more esoteric, and the scouts had already had a system put together for, Joe Bushbaum and Mel Kiper were grading football players 30 years ago, coming out with weird numbers that still don't make any sense to me. Some thoughts for you on the numbering system and how fans can pick this up and sort of play along at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So we took all of our grades and put them essentially on a Madden-ish type of system, 0 to 100. So 100 is the best you could have. Anything 90 plus is elite. You're not going to have a whole lot of players up there. That's your Tom Brady's and Aaron Donalds right now. Anything in the 80s is solid, and 70s is in that average to above average range. And the lower you go, the worse it is. And it's a snapshot of a player. There's a lot more context that needs to be added to that, but we look at everything: pass blocking, run blocking, pass rushing, how guys play in coverage. It's all part of our PFF Edge product. We can get all the grades, and we grade every single player on every play. And then our PFF Elite package has all the grades plus all of the fun stats that do add the context to what defines a player. So all that's at ProFootballFocus.com, and it's just our way of, again, adding context to every single player in the NFL, no matter which position they play.
Steve, I went out to breakfast very early in Nashville over the weekend, and I'm standing in line to get some pancakes at the Pancake Pantry, and out walks Justin Forsett. And I looked at him and I thought, of all the guys I've ever seen run the football around here, I don't know about your grading on running backs and identifying the hole and seeing the hole and having all of that timing down. But by the time Forsett got here, he still had enough legs. He still had enough quicks. But, boy, no one saw a hole better than him. And I'll tell you, the Kubiak system also played a part in that. Obviously, the guys they had on the offensive line at that point played a part in that. Alex Collins may be the best guy we've had around here that it feels to me runs hard, will run over you, sees the holes well, has some level of anticipation and hesitates at the right time. But he's had the fumbling problems. Clearly he's a bit green. Clearly he was not number 1 or 2 or 3 on the depth chart around here, although he is right now. Some thoughts about a young guy like this who did it at a high level at the SEC, who was a little bit of a forgotten guy, and runs a little big. He's not a small guy, but some thoughts about where he is, because it feels like of all the things we've seen here the last couple of years with the Terrence West and the Buck Allens and even Kenneth Dixon, who I know they hold out great hope for, right now Alex Collins doesn't look to be a bad bet. It feels to me like over the next 7 weeks against some of these bad teams, there could be some 24 carries for 119 yards and play some defense and lead the way. That's how this team's going to win. They're not going to win with Flacco throwing the ball 52 times.
Yeah, look, I like Alex Collins. I liked him quite a bit coming out of Arkansas. I think the fumbling was an issue back at Arkansas as well, and it's always kind of a thing, and it throws you in the doghouse sometimes. But he's a guy that will, like a Justin Forsett. I think Forsett's breakout 2014 was just spectacular. It was simply he ran the scheme extremely well, and he took advantage of that good offensive line. I think Collins is just capable of getting what the offensive line gives him. And that sounds simple, but, a lot of times there are running backs who just don't see the hole, that they work against the leverage of the offensive line, and it makes the offensive line look bad. And instead of taking the 4 yards, it's a -1, bounce out or whatever it might be. So I think Collins is really good within 5 yards, getting what he needs. I don't think he's a big, I don't think he's going to turn a whole lot of 6 and 7 yard gains into 50-yard runs. I don't think he's dynamic necessarily at the second level, but he's creative at the line of scrimmage, can maximize what the line gives him. He has a ton of experience in all sorts of pro-style concepts coming out of Arkansas. They ran essentially a pro-style run game. So I like what Collins does. Absolutely does run hard. If he holds onto the ball more consistently, I think he's a productive back and a guy that definitely keeps the offense on schedule. We'll get what's needed within that first 10 yards.
Man, I'd love to talk to you about what's going on around the league. And, obviously next week we go out to Green Bay, backup quarterback. Week after that, Houston comes here, backup quarterback. After that, Lions and Steelers. All right, we'll take our chances, one here, one there. Then Cleveland, then Jacoby Brissett and the Colts, then Cincinnati for what is almost sure to be my pal Marvin Lewis's swan song out there. I don't know if they have an easier schedule. They've ever had an easier schedule, I should say, over the second half of the season than what they have. But the record being where it is, the level of expectation being where it is, for me, it's all on the defense at this point. The defense has to be stout. It has to stop the run. It has to kind of take the ball away. It has to get 3 and out. It has to get the ball back. Your thoughts on the Ravens defense as an emerging group, as a group that will get better in the second half of the year, and quite frankly, as my pal Ray Lewis would say, going hunting against these second-string quarterbacks, this should be a time where there should be some optimism around here, despite the fact the way they played against Nashville last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at that schedule and you look at, the Tom Savages of the world and some of the guys that they're going up against, Brett Hundley, there is room there. There is room to make a move. You just need, a little bit better play. Coming into the season, you expected Eric Weddle and Tony Jefferson to be, the best safety duo. We had him as the best safety duo in the entire NFL. There are times where you've seen that, other times you haven't. I think this is a great opportunity.
By the way, where are they now? You thought they had potential to be the best. Where is that safety group right now for you?
So we have both of those. I don't have a duo graded necessarily, but we've got both of those guys a little bit less than expectation against the run and both playing above average in coverage. And both of those guys are Tony Jefferson made his money stopping the run and working downhill and making a ton of plays. So, I expect both of those guys to get back to more elite levels, where right now I think they're closer to solid. And, Jimmy Smith's doing a really nice job, one of the lowest passer ratings against when he's been targeted this entire season. So, there are flashes all around that secondary. I think the pass rush is going to be a big question. Where do they find a little bit more off the edge? We know for years it was Terrell Suggs and there was Elvis Dumerville, and you just don't have that consistent presence up front. So if they can get somebody to emerge, I think they're stout up front with the Brandon Williams, Michael Pierce combo and a couple of the other guys that they rotate through there. So I'm looking to that secondary being a little bit more consistent, which will work hand in hand with maybe another emerging pass rusher up front.
Give me a couple of names of guys who are among the best players in the NFL 9 weeks into this thing, but their names aren't Brady and their names aren't Aaron Donald. Give me some emerging guys here that you're like, wow, I can't wait to see him play. And my example of this would be Ray Lewis back in 96 and 97. I would go out there and watch him play, and I would sit and watch film with Marvin on Friday. And Marvin's like, I've never seen anybody do stuff like this. But no one knew who Ray Lewis was because the team was 4-12, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you can see Lewis's special talent even in on a losing team. I would highlight, DeMarcus Lawrence is doing a ton of damage over at Dallas. He's an edge rusher, and even when he's not getting sacks, you can just see his active hands and his explosiveness taking a massive step forward. Another guy that we love quite a bit, DeForest Buckner, a guy that I think we said, hey, the Ravens could use a guy like this.
Dude, he was a guy. I had 5 scouts in India a year and a half ago. 5 tell me he was going to be the best player in the class. 5 guys that I really trusted. Guys that had been all over the league. It wasn't guys in purple or any of that. Guys I knew all said Buckner would be the guy I would draft. And a year and a half in, you're singing his praises. So that's not shocking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was our top-graded interior defensive lineman that year. He's currently our number 3. Actually, tied for second interior defensive lineman with Ndamukong Suh right now. And he's beat up on the Seattle offensive line a little bit, but he's 6'7". He never comes off the field. He's led the league in snaps among interior defensive linemen the last 2 years. Did the same thing as last year in college. So he's durable. He's disruptive. Again, it gets lost on a winless San Francisco 49ers team, but once they start to get some pieces around him, I think he's more of a household name as well.
Hey, man, always great to visit with you. I know your time's valuable. Go back, put the machine on, turn the lights out, nerd it all out. Get yourself some ice-cold refreshments there. We got a lot of football to watch here the rest of the way. We're going to be following you. Give a proper plug to Pro Football Focus for our audience here and tell them how they can be a little bit more educated on football because we certainly enjoy it around here.
Yeah, all at ProFootballFocus.com. We pride ourselves on grading every player on every play, collecting all sorts of fun data on top of that, giving just different perspective on the game, and it's all part of our products, PFF Edge and PFF Elite. And look, I'm going to give you a $10 discount just for your listeners.
Okay.
PFF10 is the promo code, PFF10. You get $10 off either Edge or Elite if you go use that promo code.
Hey, dude, great work out there. Go back into the cave there. We'll be watching. We'll be following. And at some point, I'll come and bug you again in December. And when I do, I hope and think that the Ravens will still be at least alive based on how much lousy football is being played in the AFC right now, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. Just be a little bit better than average, and you'll be in the mix. Hopefully, we'll be talking playoffs.
Isn't that all of our goals, just to be a little bit better than average?
That's all we're trying to do every day.
Hey, man, appreciate you, Steve. Thanks for coming on, man.
You got it. Thank you.
You got it, Steve Palazzolo. That's Palazzolo, PFF _Steve, out at Pro Football Focus. Nobody does it better than they do, and nobody does it better than Friedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. If you're buying, selling a house, or just looking for some advice, maybe refinance, trying to figure out where you are because it is a big investment, Friedmont.com is the way to do that. And Carl Delmont, of course, owns the Harrisburg Heat, and they're kicking off this weekend as well. They get the blast in a couple of weeks. D&L Window Tinting puts the shades on the sun. That's 26 years of tinting everything. Cars, boats, businesses, they put the shades on the sun. They take away the squint. Parkville and White Marsh locations there for you, and you can always find them at D&L Window Tinting online as well. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere you happen to be. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. I've got one email address, nasty@WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We're doing some radio with CJ Mosley on Tuesday night. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry. It's going to be good times out there, and you can find out more out on our social media. I am Nestor. We We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.